Somewhere in a forgotten castle in France, there's a vault containing documents that the Vatican has been desperately trying to recover for over 200 years. These aren't just any papers, they're the secret files that Napoleon Bonaparte stole from the Pope's private archives. What makes them so dangerous? They prove that everything you know about Christianity is wrong. Welcome to my channel, where we uncover the secrets that shaped our world. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into one of the most audacious thefts in history. When Napoleon Bonaparte didn't just conquer nations, he stole the Vatican's deepest secrets. Subscribe if you're ready to discover the truth about power, faith, and the documents that could change everything. The year was 1809. Napoleon Bonaparte stood at the height of his power, having conquered most of Europe. But there was one throne he couldn't claim through military might alone: the spiritual authority of the Catholic Church. To become a true emperor, he needed the Pope's blessing. But what Napoleon discovered in pursuit of that blessing would change him forever. Napoleon had a problem. Every legitimate emperor in European history had been crowned by the Pope. Without papal approval, he was just another military dictator. So in 1804, he made Pope Pius VII an offer he couldn't refuse: travel to Paris, perform the coronation, and in return, the French Empire would protect the Catholic Church. But Napoleon had bigger plans than anyone realized. During the coronation negotiations, Napoleon was granted unprecedented access to Vatican archives, officially to review church law regarding imperial authority. What he saw in those dusty corridors changed everything. Ancient documents in languages he didn't recognize, maps showing lands that shouldn't exist, and most disturbing of all, Gospels that told a very different story about Jesus Christ. What started as a political maneuver became an obsession. Napoleon began making additional requests for archive access, claiming he needed to understand the full scope of papal authority. The Vatican, desperate to maintain their new ally, granted these requests. They had no idea they were giving the wolf access to the henhouse. Among the files Napoleon accessed were documents that shouldn't have existed. Letters allegedly written by the Apostle Paul that contradicted the New Testament. Maps showing the Americas drawn centuries before Columbus. And most shocking of all, Gospels describing Jesus not as the Son of God, but as something else entirely, something the early church had worked desperately to hide. By 1806, Napoleon understood that he hadn't just gained an imperial crown. He had stumbled upon the greatest secret in human history. The Catholic Church wasn't just a religious institution. It was the keeper of knowledge that could fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its own past. And that knowledge could be weaponized. Napoleon began planning what would become the most audacious heist in history. But this wasn't about gold or territory. It was about information. He started by requesting specific documents for extended study. Then he began making copies. By 1808, his agents were systematically cataloging everything in the Vatican secret archives. But Napoleon's demands were becoming impossible to ignore. He wanted access to files that even most cardinals had never seen. Documents from the earliest days of Christianity. Records of church councils that had supposedly never happened. The Vatican realized too late that they had created a monster, one who now knew their deepest secrets. By 1809, the relationship had completely broken down. Napoleon was making demands that the Pope couldn't possibly grant, access to documents that could destroy the Church if made public. When Pope Pius VII finally refused, Napoleon's response was swift and brutal. If he couldn't borrow the archives, he would simply take them. On July 6, 1809, French troops surrounded the Vatican. This wasn't a military conquest, it was a library raid on an unprecedented scale. While the world focused on the Pope's arrest, Napoleon's real target was the archives. Within hours, his agents were stripping the vaults of their most precious secrets. The numbers are staggering. Over 3,000 wagon-loads of documents were removed from the Vatican between 1809 and 1814. Ancient Gospels, papal correspondence dating back centuries, astronomical charts, and maps show explorations that predated official European discovery of the New World. Napoleon didn't just steal books, he stole history itself. But where did all these documents go? Officially, they were taken to Paris for study and cataloging. In reality, Napoleon had them dispersed to secret locations across France. Some went to his personal chateau at Fontainebleau. Others disappeared into private collections. And the most sensitive materials, they vanished into vaults that the Vatican has never been able to locate. In his private study at Fontainebleau, Napoleon spent countless hours poring over the stolen documents. His personal secretary, Las Casas, later wrote that the emperor would sometimes emerge from these sessions, pale and shaken, refusing to discuss what he had read. What could shake a man who had conquered Europe? Among the most dangerous documents were Gospels that had been excluded from the Bible, not because they were false, but because they were too true. These texts described Jesus as a political revolutionary, detailed his family lineage, and most shocking of all, suggested that his message had been fundamentally altered by the early church to serve imperial Roman interests. Perhaps even more disturbing were the maps, detailed charts showing the coastlines of North and South America, Antarctica, and even Australia, all drawn centuries before these continents were officially discovered. These weren't crude sketches, they were precise navigational charts, complete with latitude and longitude markings that shouldn't have existed. Even more problematic were letters allegedly written by the apostles themselves, letters that contradicted fundamental Christian doctrine. Paul's correspondence, describing Jesus as a teacher among many, Peter's accounts of the true message that was later changed, and most damaging of all, letters suggesting that the resurrection was symbolic rather than literal. The man who emerged from studying these documents was different from the Napoleon who had entered. His later writings show a profound skepticism toward organized religion that hadn't existed before. He began making cryptic references to the true history and the lies we tell ourselves. His famous quote, "History is a set of lies agreed upon," takes on new meaning when you know what he had discovered. Meanwhile, the Vatican was in complete panic. They knew exactly what Napoleon had taken, and they understood the implications. If these documents ever became public, it wouldn't just damage the Catholic Church, it could destroy Christianity entirely. Secret negotiations began immediately to secure the return of the most sensitive materials. What followed were some of the most secretive negotiations in diplomatic history. Vatican envoys made clandestine trips to French chateaux, offering enormous sums for the return of specific documents. Some payments were made in gold. Others involved territorial concessions. But Napoleon wasn't interested in money. He wanted guarantees. Napoleon's demands were extraordinary. He wanted the Vatican to acknowledge that certain historical events had never happened. He demanded changes to church doctrine regarding biblical interpretation. Most shocking of all, he insisted on a secret protocol guaranteeing that specific theological questions would never be investigated by the church. But history intervened. Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo in 1815 changed everything. Suddenly, the man who held the Vatican's secrets was in exile, and the church saw an opportunity. They demanded the immediate return of all stolen documents. What they got back was incomplete. When the documents were finally returned to the Vatican, church officials were horrified to discover that entire categories of materials were missing. The most sensitive Gospels, the impossible maps, the apostolic letters that contradicted doctrine, all gone. Napoleon had kept the most dangerous secrets for himself. Even in exile, Napoleon understood the value of what he possessed. The missing documents weren't just historical curiosities, they were insurance policies. As long as he held them, the Vatican would never dare move against him completely. It was the ultimate blackmail scheme, orchestrated by one of history's greatest strategic minds. On his deathbed in 1821, Napoleon made arrangements that the Vatican still fears today. He secretly distributed the most sensitive documents among trusted allies, creating a network of hidden archives across Europe. Each holder knew only their piece of the puzzle, but together they possessed explosive proof of the Church's deepest secrets. The documents were scattered like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Some went to loyal generals now living in America. Others were hidden in Swiss banks. A few found their way to Masonic lodges across Europe. Each cache was carefully chosen to ensure that if the Vatican ever tried to destroy the evidence, copies would survive elsewhere. For the next century, the Vatican conducted a secret campaign to locate and recover the missing documents. They used every tool at their disposal: diplomatic pressure, financial incentives, and even covert operations. Some caches were found and destroyed. Others seemed to vanish deeper underground with each attempt to locate them. Several of Napoleon's most trusted officers had fled to America after Waterloo, taking their document caches with them. These materials found their way into private collections in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Some researchers believe that certain founding fathers may have had access to these papers, explaining some of their more radical views on organized religion. The most persistent rumors center on a vault in Switzerland, hidden somewhere in the Alps near the French border. Local legends speak of a cache of documents so dangerous that they're guarded by a secret society dating back to Napoleon's era. The Vatican has allegedly made multiple attempts to locate this vault, all unsuccessful. The search continues today. Vatican investigators still work quietly to locate the missing Napoleon documents. They're aided by modern technology, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and digital archives that can trace historical transactions. But after 200 years, the trail has gone cold in some very troubling ways. Occasionally, individual documents surface at auction houses in Paris, London, and New York. These sales are always conducted in absolute secrecy, with buyers required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The Vatican appears at these auctions through intermediaries, often paying astronomical sums for single pages of text. In the digital age, the Vatican's nightmare scenario is that someone will digitize and release the Napoleon documents online. A single upload could make these secrets available to billions of people instantly. This fear has led to unprecedented cooperation between the Church and tech companies to monitor for any suspicious document leaks. Today, there exists a shadowy network of private collectors who specialize in Napoleonic Vatican materials. These individuals operate in complete secrecy, trading documents worth millions of dollars. They communicate through encrypted channels and meet in locations that change constantly. The Vatican monitors this network obsessively. Some of the documents remain in the hands of Napoleon's descendants and the families of his trusted officers. These families have maintained the secret for over 2 centuries, passing down both the documents and the responsibility to protect them. They understand that what they possess could change the world and destroy lives. Within certain academic circles, there are scholars who have devoted their careers to tracking down the Napoleon documents. They work in complete secrecy, publishing innocuous papers while conducting dangerous research. Some have disappeared. Others have had their careers mysteriously destroyed after getting too close to the truth. Recent research suggests that some of the most sensitive documents may have been moved to Jerusalem, hidden in locations that even the Vatican cannot access. These sites, protected by international law and religious tradition, may house the ultimate proof of Napoleon's discoveries about early Christianity. Among the most explosive materials Napoleon stole were genealogical records tracing the bloodlines of Jesus and his followers. These documents allegedly prove that certain European royal families are direct descendants of Jesus Christ, a revelation that could fundamentally alter both religious and political power structures. Several people who have come close to locating the Napoleon documents have died under mysterious circumstances. Heart attacks, car accidents, sudden illnesses, all striking individuals who were on the verge of major discoveries. Coincidence? Those familiar with the Vatican's history of protecting its secrets think otherwise. When asked about the Napoleon documents today, Vatican officials give carefully crafted non-responses. They acknowledge that documents were temporarily relocated during the Napoleonic period and that most materials were subsequently returned. The word "most" is doing a lot of work in that statement. The Vatican now employs some of the world's best digital forensics experts to track online mentions of the Napoleon documents. They monitor auction sites, academic databases, and even social media for any references to the missing materials. It's a 21st century manhunt for 19th century secrets. Some historians believe that Napoleon's real genius wasn't in what he stole, but in how he used it. The documents may have served as an insurance policy not just for him, but for the entire European balance of power. As long as they remained hidden, no single institution, religious or political, could claim absolute authority. Consider this. What if the documents Napoleon stole prove that Christianity as we know it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding? What if Jesus was not who the Church claims he was? What if the entire foundation of Western civilization rests on edited, altered, and incomplete information? That's the possibility that keeps the Vatican awake at night. There's a growing movement among researchers, historians, and even some clergy calling for the voluntary disclosure of whatever Vatican documents remain hidden. They argue that after 200 years, the world deserves to know the truth. The Vatican's response has been predictably cautious. A new generation of researchers is approaching this mystery with tools Napoleon never could have imagined. DNA analysis, carbon dating, computer-assisted textual analysis, and satellite archaeology. If the documents are still out there, these methods may finally bring them to light. The implications extend far beyond the Catholic Church. If the Napoleon documents prove that fundamental historical narratives are false, it could trigger a crisis of faith affecting billions of people. Political systems based on religious authority could collapse. The very concept of absolute truth might be called into question. Modern popes face an impossible choice: continue hiding the truth and risk eventual exposure, or voluntarily reveal secrets that could destroy the institution they've sworn to protect. Each pope handles this burden differently, but none have chosen disclosure. What does that tell us about what they know? With each passing year, more Napoleon-era documents surface through estate sales, archaeological discoveries, and family disclosures. The Vatican's control over this information is slowly eroding. It may only be a matter of time before someone discovers enough pieces to complete the puzzle Napoleon started. Which brings us to the ultimate question: what could be so dangerous about 200-year-old documents that a global institution with billions of followers still fears their release? What did Napoleon discover that was worth stealing the Pope's own archives? And why, after 2 centuries, does the truth remain too dangerous to tell? Today, researchers continue to piece together clues from auction records, family histories, and architectural surveys of Napoleon-era properties. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding what the emperor really found in those Vatican vaults. The truth is out there, scattered across Europe in a puzzle that's waited 200 years to be solved. Ironically, the same digital technology that the Vatican fears could also preserve these documents forever. If even one cache is digitized and distributed globally, the information becomes immortal. It's a race between discovery and disclosure, with the future of historical truth hanging in the balance. In 2019, An elderly French collector on his deathbed claimed to possess the most dangerous document Napoleon ever stole. He described it as a letter written by Jesus himself, proving he never intended to found a religion. The collector died before revealing its location, but his confession has sparked a new wave of searches. The Vatican's response to the collector's confession was swift and telling. They issued a statement denying that any such document ever existed, while simultaneously launching their own investigation into the collector's estate. If the document doesn't exist, why the urgent search to find it? Recent research has revealed that Napoleon sent encrypted letters to his allies containing references to the greatest discovery in human history and truth that would end empires. These letters, found in private collections across Europe, are slowly being decoded by experts. What they reveal could change everything. Some of the most persistent rumors suggest that certain documents were given to European royal families as insurance policies against Vatican interference in state affairs. These royal archives, protected by centuries of secrecy and diplomatic immunity, may house the most explosive evidence of all. Within universities across Europe and America, there exists an underground network of scholars dedicated to the Napoleon truth. They share information through coded academic papers, encrypted communications, and secret conferences. Their research suggests that full disclosure is closer than anyone realizes. A new generation of researchers, unencumbered by traditional academic or religious loyalties, is approaching this mystery with fresh perspectives. Using social media, crowdsourcing, and open-source investigation techniques, they're making connections that previous generations missed. All signs point toward an approaching revelation. Document fragments continue to surface. Academic pressure for disclosure grows stronger, and the Vatican's ability to maintain secrecy weakens with each passing year. The question is no longer if the truth will emerge, but when. For those who possess pieces of the Napoleon puzzle, the stakes are intensely personal. They're not just protecting historical documents, they're guarding secrets that could rewrite human understanding of faith, authority, and truth itself. The weight of that responsibility is enormous. Modern scientific methods are being applied to Napoleon-era documents as they surface. Carbon dating, ink analysis, and parchment authentication can now prove or disprove the age and authenticity of these materials. For the first time in history, we have the tools to separate genuine Napoleon documents from clever forgeries. Some researchers are proposing a radical solution, using blockchain technology to create an immutable record of all discovered Napoleon documents, making it impossible for any institution to suppress or alter the evidence. It's a 21st century answer to a 19th century conspiracy. Vatican insiders have begun speaking anonymously about the Napoleon documents, revealing details about ongoing search operations and the Church's growing panic about potential disclosure. These whistleblowers describe a culture of fear within the Vatican regarding what Napoleon might have discovered. The art and antiquities market has been quietly affected by the Napoleon document mystery. Certain categories of religious artifacts have seen their values destabilize as collectors fear that revelations could make them worthless or incredibly valuable. It's created a shadow economy around potentially explosive historical proof. Several European governments maintain secret files on the Napoleon documents, understanding that their disclosure could affect diplomatic relations with the Vatican. These nations find themselves caught between historical transparency and religious diplomacy, creating a complex web of international intrigue. Within the Vatican itself, a generational divide has emerged. Older officials raised in an era of absolute secrecy continue to resist any disclosure. Younger clergy, influenced by transparency movements and social media culture, increasingly question whether the secrets are worth protecting. Investigative journalists have begun following the Napoleon document trail, using freedom of information requests, genealogical research, and financial tracking to locate potential caches. Their work has uncovered a network of secret transactions and hidden ownership that spans 2 centuries. Progressive theologians argue that even if the Napoleon documents contradict traditional doctrine, the Church should embrace truth over comfort. They contend that faith strong enough to survive 2,000 years is strong enough to survive historical revision. Conservative clergy disagree vehemently. Some researchers believe the gradual leak of information about the Napoleon documents serves a purpose, slowly preparing humanity for revelations that might have been psychologically devastating if released suddenly. It's a kind of historical acclimatization to potentially world-changing truth. If the Napoleon documents are ever fully revealed, they won't just change our understanding of Christianity. They'll fundamentally alter how we view authority, truth, and the relationship between power and knowledge. The emperor who conquered Europe may have conquered something even greater, the official version of history itself. Today, more than 200 years after Napoleon's death, his greatest victory may still lie ahead. Somewhere in forgotten vaults, hidden rooms, and secret collections, the documents he stole continue to wait. They represent not just historical artifacts, but proof that even the most powerful institutions can be challenged by those brave enough to seek the truth. The search for Napoleon's stolen Vatican documents continues, driven by researchers, collectors, and truth-seekers who understand that history belongs to humanity, not to institutions. Every estate sale, every family revelation, every technological breakthrough brings us closer to solving the greatest heist in religious history. Whether you believe in divine authority or question it, whether you trust institutions or doubt them, the Napoleon Vatican documents remind us that truth has a way of surviving, even when buried in the deepest vaults. Sometimes the greatest emperors are not those who conquer armies, but those who dare to steal the secrets that keep empires standing. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries. If you found this exploration of hidden truth compelling, please subscribe to my channel for more stories about the secrets that shaped our world. What other truths might be waiting in forgotten vaults? Sweet dreams, and keep questioning the official story.